It's finally here, Stars fans. Opening night versus the St. Louis Blues. What are the line combinations going to look like if Roope is out? In a new segment, who will be tonight's shooting star? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105.3 The Fan and play-by-play voice of the Chippewa Steel. It's a pleasure to be with you. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day and your first listen. So excited and pumped for tonight's game against the St. Louis Blues as the Stars begin their journey in quest for the Stanley Cup here in their 30th season. And two teams that did not change all that much in the offseason. So very familiar faces and familiar styles of play. And it will be fun to watch them drop the puck and really get into it. Also want to touch on some of the lines because Roope practiced yesterday, but wasn't really involved that much. And the lines were a bit different. So he's a game time decision. And how will that shake things up? And a new segment, who will be tonight's shooting star? We're going to predict a player of the game. I don't know if we'll do it every game, but maybe for some big ones, I think it would be fun just to pick a guy, maybe who's rolling or maybe just a sleeper for that night that will have a big night. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All righty. Well, it's finally here. The games have already began to ramp up, but of course, our Stars finally get into action tonight against a Central Division rival, the St. Louis Blues. The Stars were 3-0 against St. Louis last year, and they had good numbers. But in the last four seasons, the Blues have actually kind of had the Stars' numbers. They're 8-4-1 over the last four seasons. And the Blues had a good preseason. They went 4-2-2. And of course, the Stars met them a couple of times. Pete DeBoer mentioned that it was pretty much their opening night lineup that they had a couple of days ago. So he already got a look for it. And of course, two teams that are very familiar. And there's actually only one new face for St. Louis and Kevin Hayes, who came over in the offseason. Of course, the Blues made some deadline decisions with Ryan O'Reilly, who ended up heading off to Toronto, and then Vladimir Tarasenko, of course, who was in rumors forever and eventually moved on to New York. They're both in new places now, but those are gone. But other than that, pretty much similar. A guy to look out for on the Blues, of course, Jordan Kyrou had an amazing season, 73 points last year. Career best 37 goals as well. He had a great preseason, 6 points in the 4 games he played. They have a really, really talented back end too. Guys that kind of can jump out to you, like Justin Falk, who's aging, of course, but still very serviceable. Torrey Krug is a big guy, and they had a lot of guys that missed time on their D-core, especially Colton Parayko, Falk, Krug, all missed time at some points. Nick Leddy is another veteran that missed some time last year, so they're hoping to get a bit more of consistency there. And of course, the Blues are just always a tough, gritty team to play against. They just kind of play that style. I think Craig Berube is the perfect kind of, symbol for how they want to play, just kind of mean and tough. But it seems that with St. Louis, it all kind of falls on Jordan Binnington's shoulders, right? and that amazing run he had in his rookie year. But he played in 61 games last season, so he's a workhorse for them. It went 27-27, 3.31 goals against average, and .894 save percentage, which is nothing to jump up and down about. But he's a firecracker in net, not afraid to mix things up. And we'll see how he fares against this high-powered offense for the Dallas Stars, who, of course, had another great preseason. They went 4-2-1, and their offense was just lighting it up. New combinations on the back end. And it looks like the Stars are going to be rocking and rolling out of training camp. But of course, there's been some injuries, and it looks like Roope is going to be a game time decision. We'll talk a bit more about that when we dive into some of the line combinations, and if Roope is out, how that affects all the lines. And DeBoer spoke about it too earlier in the week, that of course you want to start building chemistry now, but you have to be fully healthy to do that. So that's always a tough thing. I also love to hear Tyler Seguin, who spoke to the media, and they basically asked him the question like, hey, this is new territory where people have expectations and you're one of the favorites. How do you kind of deal with that? And he said, well, I guess we're being nicer to the media. And of course he said that sarcastically, but talked about how they have to kind of block that out, and their locker rooms good at doing that. And no surprise there with the amount of veterans they have in the dressing room, of course. But they're hearing that, right? Those guys are all on social media. They're watching NHL Network, and they have to be very, very familiar with all the hoopla about the Dallas Stars this year. Some new leadership, I guess you could say, in St. Louis too. That's kind of shifted over. Braden Shen, who's I think on his third stint now with St. Louis, he's kind of made his way around the NHL, and he finds himself back in St. Louis, and he will be the captain leading them. But they have some good young talent, guys to really take a peek at too, like Pavel Buchnevich, who I've always had an affinity for. I thought he was really good in New York. Robert Thomas is a very good young player. Really like his game. They have a lot of guys kind of like Robert Thomas. I think Kyrou is kind of similar, where just a little bit bigger, and they like to get in on the forecheck hard, and they try to create turnovers by getting pucks in deep, the old cliche, and then kind of going to work from there. And that's when St. Louis was at their best. Big physical back end, and of course with offensive potential like Torrey Krug, who of course got his payday to come to the Blues. And if he's healthy, they'll be very, very good. But the Stars have fared well, of course. Robertson will be just fine coming back. Of course, kind of headlining everything with Robertson with his 109 points last year. But I think it'll be a good contest, good for the Stars to open up at home. I don't think they'll have much of an issue. It's always hard, right? It's always a coin flip. It seems like there's so much parity in the Central Division too, or just really in all of the NHL. You never know how it's all going to shape up. But when these two teams get together, always a fun one. They seem to play pretty dramatic games, pretty close games too. And it'll come down to the netminder. Excited to see Otter again. Of course, he played in 62 games last year. To see him in, a meaningful game will be fun. And we'll see if he can really shut it down here tonight. Lots of questions and different combinations that we saw in practice yesterday, because Roope skated, but he wasn't in the line rushes, and DeBoer has said that they want to take their time. No reason to rush him. And we'll get into it a bit more here in the next segment. But with Vegas actually being 4 days away too, they kind of have this weird schedule where they're playing tonight, of course, and then they're off for 4 days. So you maybe have some extra time to get him back for Vegas. But they don't want to push him and have a longer extended period of time, right, that you miss him. And which, I touched on throughout the week too. There's no point to rush him back, and then you miss him for 20 games, and then that can really mess up what you're trying to do. So DeBoer will have his hands full right away. But excited to see the power play units too. Seguin was practicing on the top unit with Roope being out. A new quarterback for power play number 2 is in town. Niels Lundqvist will get the opportunity, and hopefully he seizes it, right? DeBoer said that he was very, very thrilled and thinks that he used his offseason to his best advantage. And he's going to get the opportunity. Hopefully he grabs onto it and never lets go. It's a great thing for a young guy. And he's so mobile that I think he's out of Miro, probably the second best of creating chances for himself, just because I think he's a bit smaller. Harley, of course, is a great skater, but I think Lundqvist has a bit more of, I don't know how to say, innate ability, or it's just kind of self or subconscious, I should say, to try to make a move and get to the net. I remember a goal. I can't remember who it was against last year, but when he danced around the top of the zone and then he worked into the left side and at the goal line, he made a beautiful move. It may have been against Florida. I don't think you'll see a whole lot of that out of Harley. So with having Lundqvist at the top of your zone facilitating, and you're really probably, I mean, of course, they like to run their power play through the top of the zone, of course, with a quarterback, and then they're trying to feed off to the flanks to your guys like Robertson and Ben, who's ever out there, Seguin, so you can get those one-time opportunities. So he's going to be a huge part, right? I mean, if he's not rocking and rolling, the power play is not going to do anything, right? it all kind of flows through him. So we'll see how that fares. Of course, they were a wonderful power play last year with the top 10 in the National Hockey League. So a lot of intriguing storylines tonight, but at the end of the day, it's just so exciting to have hockey back at the AAC. Very, very excited. Drop your predictions below. What's the final score going to be tonight? And your shooting star. We'll get to that at the end of today's episode. All righty. That wraps up a bit of a preview between the Blues and Stars. Let's talk a little bit about these combinations, these line combinations, because Roope's a game time decision. What are the Stars going to do if that happens? And we'll talk about that in just a second. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in the action. Come on, guys. NFL season is right here. The Dallas Cowboys are being the Dallas Cowboys, but you don't have to just bet on the Cowboys. You can bet on any team. And also, they have wonderful options because the app is so easy to use. You can do spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You can just predict Dak's going to throw a bunch of picks, all right? We've seen it. That's okay, though. And you can bet on things like that. So go ahead, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NHL. Alrighty, back here on Locked On Stars. Thank you so much for all your support. Go ahead and hit subscribe. Never miss an episode of Locked On Stars. Almost to 2,000. Go ahead and do that. Be sure to check out tomorrow's episode. Of course, we'll recap the game. I'll try to do an instant reaction. I think, actually, I'm not going to try. I will do an instant reaction to the game tomorrow night. And of course, I'll have a recap on Friday. I don't know if I can do an episode, like a kind of a mini one after. My parents are in town, actually. They're visiting me for the first time since I moved. So I'll be kind of busy doing some things with them, but I'll be watching the game. Okay, no worries. I will be locked in on my phone wherever we are tomorrow night. So let's dive into this a bit with Roope being out. Interesting because, and I broke this up. Maybe it was this week or last week where, I kind of started rambling. I'm like, now you can, if people are out, like with Foxa or Johnson are out, I mean, now you're really can be creative with your different lines. And we saw that in practice with line rushes yesterday. The back end is fine, of course. Suter, Heiskanen, Harley, Hakanpää, Lindell, Lundqvist, and Hanley are your 7D. But up front, Seguin, no surprise, jumps up in between Robertson and Pavelski, which makes total sense. When Roope missed a stretch last season, they put Seguin. He did great, which is a great sign. Of course, Seguin does not have the skating ability that Roope has, but still very valuable and is a great two-way player. I think his 200-foot game is so good. And it's nice to see him have an opportunity to play up with guys of that nature with Robertson, and he really relished in the opportunity. And I think it shows you that he still has a lot left in the tank. And if Seguin had a bit of a bounce back year last year, he could really have a nice season. He really, really could. He's fully healthy coming in again. Couldn't say that in the past. Of course, last year was like the first year he came in healthy. Had a nice year. I mean, 50 points, 21 goals. Love to see him get to that 30 mark because he has that in him. And if he gets to play on this power play for a while on the top unit, if Roope does miss a bit of a stretch and let him start teeing off like he used to be on that left circle and used to just demoralize goaltenders when he was teeing it up, we'll have a good opportunity. This is where it gets fun, though. Duchesne, Dodonov, and Marchment was a line. Then you have Johnston, Dellandrea, and Ben, and then Faksa, Smith, and Steele as your fourth line. So very, very interesting. And of course, the big line that really gets kind of jostled, I guess, or kind of thrown together is this Duchesne, Marchment, and Dodonov line, which is very, very interesting. Marchment, love his game where he's a bit Radulov is how I kind of describe him, where he's a bit all over the place and he's unhinged, right? But I think he's so effective. Hoping he's going to have a big year. Got off to a roaring start last year and then just kind of hit a wall and could never return to what we saw early in 2022, unfortunately. And then having to put Duchesne with them, who of course they've been playing with during the preseason, and Dodonov. We'll see how it fares. I don't know if it has as much firepower as Ben Johnston and Dodonov does, but Duchesne led the Predators 56 points last year. Of course, Dodonov, who a lot of stars said was the best guy coming out of training camp. Many of the players, when asked about who you noticed during training camp, said Dodonov, which is a fantastic sign. And I think Dodonov, who's a more of a distributor, is going to actually pair very nicely with a guy like Duchesne, who, of course, has that wicked wrister and wants to score goals. So that would be interesting. Ben Johnston to Dellandrea is a line that we've seen before. We actually saw quite a bit last year when DeBoer was trying to find a guy to kind of complete the trio. And of course, when Dodonov came over, it was the perfect match. So that line, I don't think will suffer too much with Ben and Johnston. Johnston, of course, is probably going to take a step up. And this is a great opportunity for Dellandrea, right? I've said that I think he's at best on an ideal team, a fourth line guy. But he could be, fringe top six on a team. I think this is a great spot, and he gets an opportunity now. And if he plays really well, you force DeBoer to have to make some decisions. So with Johnston and Ben and Dellandrea, that'll be fun. And of course, the fourth line, Faksa, Steele, and Smith, not going to be probably contributing all that much offensively, but that should be a nice, just grind it out, spend a minute in the opposition zone. And hopefully you can chip in offensively. I like Sam Steele's game. He's a bit of a Kiviranta guy, right? Smaller. He can penalty kill. I think he's going to become a crowd favorite because he likes to do the dirty work. He had a great year in Minnesota. He was there for a while, and we'll get our first look at Craig Smith, who of course is another veteran with a ton of experience. Fox is all good to go as well, which is a good sign. So an interesting forward group with Roope being a game time decision. And of course, if Roope comes back or he's ready to go, then the lines kind of all fall back into place. But the fortunate thing is the Stars do have this depth. And I hate to say this, and even DeBoer talked about it, where he said it's important to win games because of the parity in the league right away. It is a long season. Not the worst if Roope was out. I think you get to try other things and come up with combinations that you may have not thought of before heading into the season. And maybe you strike gold with something. That's all I want to say on that. Of course, you want to be completely healthy and you want the chemistry that you have. Of course, you're never going to break up this Robo, Hintz, and Pavelski line. I'm not calling for that, but with some other lines, you do get some differences. And who knows? Sometimes things go stale. right? It's a long grind, right? Things can go stale. Maybe you have to switch things up to find some answers, right? You got to find solutions. Things are going to go wrong. Things are going to happen. There's going to be tough stretches, and you got to find solutions. So it may not be the worst thing if he's out. And we can see what we have in some other guys in some different lineups. Okay. So we kind of ran through that. We talked it to death. I know we've spoken a lot about the lineup, and I'm sure a lot of people are tired of me just talking about lineup and previews. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we're all just ready for hockey to get started. I wanted to debut a new segment, predicting tonight's shooting star. We can workshop the name of this, okay? But I just came up with shooting star, right? It just made sense. It may be stupid. You can let me know. We can come up with a different name, but let's predict tonight's player of the game. I'll give you 9. Go ahead and put yours into the comment, pause it, and then continue the video and find out mine. And we'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Sleeper. The NHL season is finally here. We've all been yearning from it. I love the NHL. You love the NHL. And that's why we got to tell you about the Sleeper app, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network. And it's my go-to for daily sports, fantasy sports, especially for daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash for daily fantasy. With the amount of players in this league, the stars, Connor Bedard, who was going crazy the other night, actually had a really nice debut. And, of course, scored his first goal yesterday. And everybody's taking notice. It had a lot of ratings, okay? But guys like Robertson, Makar, Oettinger, Crosby, who played Bedard in his NHL debut. You can pick goals, assists, saves, plus minus, all that good stuff. You don't have to just play. You don't have to just play against a team. You can play daily fantasy. You don't have to worry about guys getting injured and all that stuff. You can use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Alrighty, last segment here on Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day, your team, every single day. Game 1 of 82 for the Dallas Stars tonight at the AAC. I love opening up at home. I feel like it makes a world of difference. I don't know why the season doesn't fully start until it doesn't feel like it fully starts until you play your first home game. I don't know if you agree with that sentiment. That's just something that I think. But I thought it would be fun to, maybe not every game, but for some big matchups, just who's going to be tonight's shooting star and who's going to be our player of the game. And let's predict. Opening nights, I'm not going to go with a Robertson or Pavelski. I'm going to go with a guy who was phenomenal last year on opening night against Nashville, Mason Marchment. That is my shooting star for tonight's game against the Blues. Marchment, not a fantastic year last year, coming over just 31 points and only 12 goals in 68 games. Only 12. This guy, I think, is going to have a huge year, and it's going to start again. And he's going to prove everybody why the Stars went out and got him. He's going to prove the front office that they were correct going out and getting him. He's going to have a big night. Of course, showed out against Nashville last year. This guy should have 20 goals, all right? Put it on the board. He's going to have 20 goals this season. I think he's going to have a great night tonight. He's with Duchesne. He gets to play with Dadonov. Marchment, excellent at driving the net. He's so good at taking the eyes away of goaltenders. And he's very big and very physical. He's going to be driving the net. Dadonov is going to be feeding him. He's going to be putting rebounds in with Duchesne, just ripping shots towards Binnington. There's going to be a rebound loose, and Marchment's going to clean it up. So Marchment is tonight's shooting star for myself. Go ahead in the comments. Let me know who is going to be your shooting star for tonight. Let me know your predictions for the game. Very excited to take this one in. Binnington versus Oettinger. That's a fun matchup right there. If it sounds good, it's probably good. And the Blues are a team that, I think are going to be a sneaky, maybe wild card team. I mentioned it in the official predictions. Just a team that plays hard, and if Binnington's on, this team's going to be good. They kind of go as Binnington does, but they got some good young players, and they got a mix of veterans now too, which they kind of had for years. And Craig Berube and Pete DeBoer know each other very well. The Stars are a bit more run and gun. I think the Blues like to play a bit slower of a pace, but that's just because their personnel kind of sets up for that way. Uh, every time I think of Stars Blues, I just think of that series and what was it, 2018, 2019, of course, when Maroon scored the game 6 winner, but that Blues team would just wear you down. I mean, just cycle after cycle after cycle. They were so good at it. And they're great at stretching the ice too. They do the seam pass through the middle of the rink where they have a winger at the opposing blue line. And Tarasenko would just be always alone, almost just bearing down on Bishop during that. And of course, I'm going to 5 years ago now, but that's kind of what I think about. But a big division matchup, right? Against the Blues. The Stars were pretty good against the Central Division last year. They were 3-0 against the Blues, of course. It's important to win these games. You got to get points, and DeBoer said it. It's big. Actually, just very excited if Roope's out to just see how other guys play with each other. It'll fun to see Lundqvist. Hopefully, there's a few power plays. That's another thing I'm looking forward to. What does these new pairings of Harley and Hakanpää look like? Could this be like finding gold with the size that they have? And this, maybe they're playing, just as many minutes or as close to Suter and Heiskanen. A lot of different decisions there. That could be really fun. And of course, Lundqvist and Esa Lindell. So very, very fun. Just excited to get this season rolling. Thank you so much once again for joining me today on Locked On Stars. Enjoy your Stars hockey tonight. I'll be back with an instant reaction, of course. And then on Friday, no worries, we will break this one down because a Western Conference rematch in 4 days after tonight's, but we're focusing on tonight. So Stars Blues, 7 o'clock puck drop at the AAC. Enjoy it wherever you may be watching or consuming the game. If it's at the AAC, I'm jealous, or is at home watching Bally. Just enjoy it. It is here, baby. Texas hockey time. Let's go. Quest for a Stanley Cup. Let's party like it's 1999 this year. What do you say? That'll do it. Thank you so much. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. You can follow me on the Twitter at JoeyTheJet19 or the X thing. Also, I'll be throwing some stuff out there because I'm very, very excited. If you could not tell that I've said it for the 100th time in this episode. All right, that will do it. Let's get a dub tonight. Stars win 3-1, baby. Oettinger's almost perfect. 3-1. Stars win. Book it tonight against the Blues. All right, that'll do it on Locked On Stars. So long, Stars fans.